Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, the channel where we are making a computer role-playing game using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to show you some ways to work with text and specifically some ways to change from uppercase to lowercase and vice versa. So I've got a program, I've got the output on the left side here, and then I've got the code on the right side. And what I've done is we start with some example text that literally says example text, and I have printed that. Then I've printed it with the first E in example in uppercase, and then I've printed it with everything in uppercase, then I've printed it with everything in lowercase again, and finally I've printed it with the E beginning example and the T beginning text, both in uppercase. Now, the first three can all be done with single commands, and the last one doesn't seem to have a single command that does it, but I've written a little loop that'll make that happen. So let's go through all of them. Start turning some text so that the first letter is a capital letter. We go set $z equals $z dot to upper first, which is lowercase t, lowercase o, uppercase u, lowercase p, p, e, r, uppercase f, lowercase i, r, s, t, and then bracket, end bracket. You do need to have those upper and lower case. You can't just write out to upper first, and you do need to put that bracket there or it won't work. So that's fairly straightforward. That makes the first letter a capital letter. To make everything uppercase is very similar, except instead of to upper first, we have to uppercase. So it's T-O, capital U, P-P-E-R, capital C, A-S-E, and then the brackets again. To make everything lowercase, as you might have guessed, is set $z equals $z dot to lowercase, so T-O, capital L, O-W-E-R, capital C, A-S-E, bracket, end bracket. And then finally, there doesn't seem to be a single command that'll make the first letter of each word a capital letter, so I've had to do that with a few more lines of code, so I'll go through that. First of all, we set Z equal to Z dot to upper first, so that the first letter is a capital. And then we set Y equal to quote quote, that is equal to a string that has no characters in it. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each letter of Z. We're going to, from left to right, we're going to send those letters, we're going to add those letters to Y, except that if it is the first letter of a word, we're going to change it to uppercase. And how we tell if something's the first letter of the word is we look at the letter or the character immediately before it, and if that character is a space, then we know that the letter is the first letter of a word. So we have a for loop. For x equals 0, x is under or equal to z.length minus 1, and then x++, all separated by semicolons. Now, as I've mentioned before in this series, you can treat a string, to some extent you can look at the individual letters as if they were slots in an array. So for example, I could do $z bracket 4, end bracket, and if Z was a string, Twine would be okay with that. Even though it's not an array, if it's a string, it would do that. It would look at one of the characters in the string. Somewhat counterintuitively, it wouldn't look at the fourth character, which is probably what I would expect, because the first character is Z0. As with a lot of things in computing, it starts counting from 0. So you have to bear that in mind. That's why we start with for x equals 0 rather than for x equals 1. So we have this for loop, and within the for loop we have an if, else, /if. structure, which is if $z square bracket $x minus 1 end square bracket equals quote space quote. In other words, look at the character before zx, which is zx minus 1, and if it is equal to a space, if it is a space, then we're going to do this thing. Otherwise, we're going to do the second thing. So the thing we do if the relevant character is a space is we set $y equals $y plus $z square bracket $x end square bracket dot to uppercase with the U and the C in capitals, and then bracket end bracket. In other words, if the character before ZX is a space, we add the uppercase version of that character to Y. Bear in mind that when you go set Y equals Y plus something, and Y is a string, it doesn't mean change the value of what's already in Y, it just means add more characters to the right. So, for example, if I have the character 1 in a string, and if let's say that's Z, and I say set Z equals Z plus quote 2 quote, it won't create the character 3. It'll end up with the string 1 2 because it doesn't add them together. It just adds it onto the end. So if the character to the left is a space, add the uppercase version of this character. Otherwise, the second thing we do after the else, set $y equals $y plus $z square bracket $x end square bracket. In other words, add to Y just the character rather than the uppercase version of the character. And then we end the for loop /for, and then finally we print Y, because this whole loop has been taking each character of Z and turning the ones we need into uppercase versions of themselves, and then we just end by printing out the final result. So the other ones are quite straightforward. If you want to make the first character a capital, want to make them all capitals, or want to make them all lowercase, there's a single command for that, to upper first, to uppercase, or to lowercase, respectively. Whereas if you want to make the initial letter of each word uppercase, you need a bit of code, which I've set out there. As usual, this little mini program I've put in the supplementary materials section of the zip file that you can download from itch.io, from the link in the description. So if you want to take a closer look at that, please feel free to download it from there. Anyway, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.